Alright, now with the filters all set, we can start prepping some of the data and visualizations for our dashboard. And I'm going to start by calculating the average annual wage by industry for 2020. So let's go ahead and start prepping things in our data prep tab here. We're going to want average wage by industry. And I like to do this. I like to give a title to whatever calculation I'm going to do, just so that I can reference things later. So we're going to do industry and average annual wage. And before I go ahead and do the calculations here, I'm going to apply some quick formatting so I can differentiate my calculations from my filters. Let's make this bold, give it a light green background, and let's make this a little bit darker green, maybe with white bold text. And then for these, we can do a dark blue and a light blue here. And we can copy the formatting and apply it down here. Now, quick pro tip, if you want to center the text between these two cells, you could use merge and center, but I actually have a better suggestion. With the two cells, or the number of cells that you want to center the text around selected, press Ctrl 1 to open the Format Cells dialog box, and in the Alignment tab, you can switch this to General, or from General rather, to center across selection. And if you press OK, you'll see that we still maintain two independent cells, but the text is centered between them. So we can do the same here, and the same here. And there we go. Now, obviously you don't need to take this step yourselves. I just find that having everything nice and clean really helps me keep things organized. But with that out of the way, it's time to actually calculate these figures. So let's copy the industries from here and paste them over here. And what we want is to calculate the average wage for each industry for the current year, which is 2020. So we need to calculate a conditional average based on these two criteria. And we can accomplish this with the AVERAGEIFS function. Now, I'm going to walk through it here, and we'll be using these functions throughout the course plenty of times. But if you're not familiar with functions like AVERAGEIFS and SUMIFS, then I do highly recommend that you look into them, because they are really powerful for creating pivot table style calculations, which are really useful in dashboards. So I'm going to start by writing my AVERAGEIFS function. There we go. And it's going to start by asking our average range, which is the range of data that I want to calculate the average from, which in this case is going to be the average annual wage figures in my raw data. So I'm going to select the entire column here. Now, if I comma over to the next argument, you'll see that it's asking for my first range of criteria. And as we discussed, we want to calculate the average based on industry, right? So my first criteria range is going to be the range of data where my industries live, which is column B right here. And the criteria that these rows need to match, or the values rather, I'm going to comma over, is the industry in each of these rows here. So what we're basically saying is we want to calculate the average annual wage whenever the industry here is equal to the industry here. So that's one criteria, the industry, but we still have a second criteria to consider, which is for my date filter, because we only want the averages for 2020. So in my criteria range 2, I'm going to go back to the data, and I'm going to select my year column here, press comma, comma over to my second criteria, and what we want the year in that column to be equal to is to the current year, which is 2020. And I'm going to press F4 to fix the column, because this criteria is always going to live in this cell. You'll notice that we didn't fix it here, because as we apply this formula down, we do want this reference to move to the next industry down for each cell. So I'm going to close my formula, press enter, and let's apply some quick formatting. I'm going to select the cell, press Ctrl 1, go back to number, and we're dealing with currency figures, and we don't really need any decimal places, so let's remove those. Press OK, and it looks like business services had an average annual wage of $74,713 in 2020. And if you want to double check that, we can go back to our data. Again, press Ctrl-Shift-L to enable our filters. Let's filter this down to business services and 2020. And if we select our entire average annual wages, you'll see that the average is $74,713, which matches this exactly. So we're doing the calculations properly. Let's press Ctrl-Shift-L one more time to get rid of the filters. Go back to data prep, and we can apply this calculation down. So if I go into any of these cells and press F2, you'll see that I can step into the formula. And what this is doing is calculating the average from my average annual wages whenever the industry is equal to this industry here, and the year is equal to 2020. Press enter, and there we go. We're calculating our average annual wage by industry for the current year.